Smashing Pumpkins album, Sear, its 11th album, and we've got Billy Corgan on Zoom from Chicago. Great to see you. How are you?
Well, it's getting warm where you are, and it's getting cold where I am, so I don't know how good it can be.
Well, it's good for us. Yeah, no, it's nice to coming into summer, and lockdowns are starting to get loosened, and in fact, we can pretty much do anything over here at the moment, but you're heading into another lockdown by the sound of it, and I'm guessing there'll be more music on the way, because that's all you can do right now.
Yeah, we're locked up in recording 46 songs as we speak, so we're trying to take advantage of the lockdown, but yeah, it's not a good vibe over here.
No, and have you done most of these songs in the last 6 months? Because I knew you're working on something after Sear. You're looking at this sort of, I guess, a sequel to Melancholy, and is this all part of that?
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Not totally. But yeah, everything's been written this year, so all 46 are from this year.
And, I mean, is it one of those things where when you're in a good zone creatively, and also just, I guess, happy with the band as well, pumping out this many songs is actually kind of effortless? Is that the go?
No, it's actually a lot of work. It's just as much work as it's always been. I just feel like with a band like us, music's always been our way of sort of correcting the record. People kind of get their mindset that we're a certain type of band, or we operate a certain way, or they think the band's dead or whatever. It's always been our way of saying, no, you're wrong. And that's been our only corrective message to medium to the public record. Outside of that, everyone's always talking about things that don't matter to us and are kind of irrelevant to our history. So this is our only way of kind of fighting back, I guess. It's either that or argue with the press like I used to, and I don't feel like doing that, so I'll just stick to music for now.
It's a lot of music, and the thing is, though, you have all the songs are strong, though. I mean, we've all heard albums where they've done a double album and it's been a bit weak or whatever, but this is 20 songs that are brilliant, and the fact that all these years later you can still be in this great creative zone. I guess lockdown's treated you pretty well.
Well, my father told me when I was very young, learn how to write songs. And that was one of the great pieces of advice I ever got. And styles come and go, bands have their moment and don't, but songs have a way of transcending time. And so that's what I've always leaned back on. And I worked really hard on these songs because I think that's the thing that sort of separates us from the next guy. Everybody can have a moment, but not everybody can pump out an album of high quality songs. And so same thing, that's what we're kind of standing on. And that's where we want to be. I think that's where we've always wanted to be, is just about the music.
You finding it easy being a songwriter at your age now rather than, say, 25 years ago when you were, going through your terrible 20s and, learning about life and depression and all that sort of stuff? It must be different having a kid now,
Yeah. The secret to being a songwriter is you just write wherever you are. You don't try to write where you're not or where you think you ought to be. You just write where you are. So if you're in a bad place, you just write about being in a bad place. If you're in a good place, you just write about that. And of course, as you age, your experiences change and the things that matter to you. Things that I look back on now that were amazing that we did, 30 years ago that I didn't even think twice about because my life was such a blur. Now I really appreciate. So if I maybe stop and smell the roses a bit more, that's the advantage of being a little bit older, is understanding that life's really valuable and precious and you shouldn't waste it. And I mourn where I did waste it, but I'm still here and I'm just trying to have a good time as much as I can in the middle of a plague.
Well, there's going to be a lot of music around, I guess, in the next couple of years, because it's not just, a virus. It's also, you come through a really turbulent time in America, politically as well. So it's like England back in the 70s and the 80s. A lot of, protest music came out, I guess, back then. And I could imagine there'll be a bit of that coming out of America in the next year.
I'm curious about that, because the one thing that I think is historically different about this time, if you look at the turbulent 60s or the turbulent 70s in the UK, stuff like that, there seems to be almost a consensus between the musical class and the political class. So there doesn't seem to be friction. I mean, there's friction against one political party, but there doesn't really seem to be a counterculture, which is kind of strange. Like they said in the last election, if you, this is not my words, this is what I read. Somebody said, if you're in agreement with big tech companies, the government, and the media, you're not against anything, right? So it's kind of strange. Like, will there be, and I'm saying this for young musicians, will there be a class of musicians that rises up against what is now seemingly a kind of social consensus in America? Because I can't say that's ever been the case that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And going back historically, that hasn't been the case. There's a weird alignment that's going on that doesn't seem to be engendering protest music. It seems to be more self-congratulations or something.
Yeah, well, we all expected it. We all thought, even over here, we thought, oh, look, coming into 2020 and after what's happened this year for us over here, you think there's going to be a bit of that, but it hasn't quite happened yet. I think everyone's kind of trying to pump out happy music as well because to counter what a shit year it's been, So maybe it's a bit of that too, positivity.
Maybe we're reaching a point where people are less inclined to believe in one side or the other and more inclined to think about sort of not the middle, but like, is there some other version of things? Because maybe that story's sort of worn itself out. I know it has in America. It's so divisive that it's like just people don't even talk about it anymore. We've reached a point where people even stop talking because there's just nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I've sort of seen on Facebook. I think people are just avoiding picking sides because I think the thing is as well, publicly, we all have mates on either side. You just go, it's just not worth bringing up the conversation on the line, let alone putting it.
Interrupt you, but as a public artist, I mean, part of my job is to be able to talk to everybody. That's, when I look at an audience, I don't think like, what side are you on politically? What side are you on socially? I mean, I just want to communicate. So an artist by definition is supposed to be a unifying figure. I really want everybody to get along. I really believe everybody should have the great chance at the American dream, all that stuff. So it's hard to watch the divisiveness, and there's plenty of blame to go around. I don't think one side is great and one side's bad. I think they're all messed up.
Yeah, they are. Well, back to the music. Actually, back to you. So have you actually enjoyed having a family during this time? I mean, has it been a special time for you to begin with anyway?
Oh, no, I love it. I got 2 young kids, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'll tell you a quick story. I bought a vintage Santa, like one of those light up ones from the past. And I came down the other plugged in. So I knew my son had plugged it in because he's the older one. So I asked him today, I said, did you plug in that Santa? And he kind of made a face like, oh, I'm in trouble. I said, I'm not mad at you. Just tell the truth. And he goes, no. A guy came in here who was wearing a mask. He was my size. He plugged it in. And how I made him leave the house.
So good.
So yeah, I mean, I got to give him points for being clever. So that's great. The great advantage of this time is to spend a lot of time with family. So I realize not everyone's in the same position I am, so I'm sensitive to that. But for us, it's been a beautiful time in that way. But as soon as we go out the gates, it's Mad Max over here, and it's getting worse. I mean, people routinely throw around words like civil war in this country. You know what I mean? Are we really looking at like some sort of dystopia? Going back to the original Mad Max with Mel Gibson. So we may be there. It may be time.
Oh, it's so sad. I mean, living there is one thing, but a country I love as well. And I usually visit a couple of times a year, and I've got friends in LA, and it's sad for me thinking I may never get back again. The way it's going. I mean, we're pretty much COVID free over here. We're so lucky because we can.
Well, you guys went hardcore in the lockdown. We had a situation here where they kind of did the lockdown, but not really. And then what's happened now is nobody believes it. And so they're trying to basically trying to go more like the way you guys went originally, and nobody's buying it. So now it's a what show. It's a total mess. Like they came out, we have Thanksgiving come up, which is a big holiday this week, and there's literally governors coming out and saying don't have Thanksgiving with your families. So you can imagine how people are reacting. They're just not having it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally coming out and saying stuff like don't hug your grandma. I mean, it's just. See, that's what I'm saying. They blew it the first time around, so nobody's listening now. So now it's just.
Yeah. And it happened in one of our states in Victoria, where Melbourne is. They went a little bit too hard, and it was a bit like that. They were like, stay away from your parents, stay away from your grandparents, and I think that forced people to be a bit more negative about it. But actually, it worked. The whole thing worked. So we're pretty lucky.
Well, God bless. I hope you guys are good because it's a beautiful place. But here it's. I mean, my state they just locked back down again. I'm in Illinois in America, and they just locked everything back down again. So it's a mess. I mean,
well, hopefully we can have you touring over here, because I think a lot of bands are starting to think, okay, there's a bit of money to be made in Australia. As long as you can get over and get through the border, you know, we've already got Guns N' Roses confirmed for next year, and as long as you can get through the 14-day isolation at, you know, in a hotel or a resort or something.
I'm happy to get on a boat down there. Just somebody's got to book us.
Yeah, okay, I'll call some people and we'll see how we go.
Please do, yeah. I mean, I've complained publicly that nobody will book us down there. We've tried to come many times.
Well, now's probably the time, and people are also willing to pay more for a concert ticket and also pay for it early, because I think we all realize how, you know, how privileged we are, and you know, so hopefully there's a bit of money getting around, but the record companies are all, and the touring companies are all a bit tight at the moment, as you can imagine. But yeah, it's a lot of interesting time. It's some new music coming out. You got the new ACDC album. Foo Fighters have got an album coming out next year. Do you listen to music while you're recording your own stuff, or do you kind of isolate yourself a bit?
No, I go into musical lockdown. I can't listen to anything recording. I know something about it drives me insane. Maybe because I'm listening to music for 10, 12 hours a day. So by the time I get home, the last thing I'm going to do is fire something up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because you almost want silence, I'm guessing, because you'd be constantly tweaking things and, you know, working on a song or 5 or 46 songs right now.
Silence is good when you're dealing with a guitar army.
Yeah. And with the album, it is certainly more synth based and the guitars have been sort of pulled back a little bit. Is that sort of progression for the band? Is the zone you're in right now to go that sound?
No, I think we just wanted to make a contemporary record, and so we just made whatever choices we thought would do that. You know, you work at a radio station. I've handed in plenty of rock and roll songs in the last few years, and they just don't get played.
Yeah.
Play my old songs. I can't speak for where you're sitting, but they'll play my old songs, but they won't play my new songs with guitar. So at some point I just look around and say, well, I want to make more modern music. I still like to get played on the radio. I still can write a good song. And amazingly, we made a record now where it's getting played on the radio. So I guess I made the right decision in terms of that. And, but it's not, you know, we're not against the guitar. I mean, we've made lots of music, and this is what we just wanted to do for right now. But people seem to be, it's fine by us, because, you know, our history has always been kind of a mixture of goth, electronica, and guitar. So we're just heavy on one side of the street, but we're making a new record right now, which is totally loaded up with guitars. So it's not like a trend or anything.
Well, let's talk about that. So that's the 25th anniversary of Melancholy's next year.
Sorry, we just passed the anniversary.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. The anniversary we're talking about hopefully doing a tour next year based around the record.
Oh, that'd be, yeah. And you're looking at sort of, hopefully, well, I guess it'd be America and Europe, and, you know, if we can book you down here, we'd love to get you down here and do that. But
if we get down there for that, I don't know if we'll ever come, because I mean, that's a perfect record to come down and play Australia again. You know, big show, you know, full production, and you know, 3 hours worth of music from a particular time period. I mean, what can go wrong, you know? So
I'm reading here that this is going to be like a sort of a sequel with Melancholy. So does that mean it sort of carries over from that? Is that what you're aiming for? Or
well, Melancholy was written as a musical, although I didn't talk about it much at the time. Yeah. And then Machina was the musical, although I sort of talked about it at the time. So this would be like the third part of the trilogy.
Gotcha.
Sort of like what starts with the Zero character on Melancholy and goes to the Glass character on Machina. This would be the third incarnation of the character, and sort of the end of the story. And so we're recording that right now as we speak. We got 33 songs for the record, and it's like a 3-act play, and the idea is to one day stage it as a full production. So yeah, it's pretty full on, and it's everything that you would expect from us as far as like power and dynamics and insanity.
Would you call it a rock opera? Is that sort of what you?
That's the closest thing. I think people are less allergic to the idea. My whole thing is I just want a reason to stage more, like how Roger Waters did with The Wall. I want to be able to stage a bigger show with a theme. I think rock and roll is running a little bit behind the curve as far as like how to present shows. I mean, yeah, everyone's got lasers and stuff, but I think given everyone's ADD with the phones, people need to be more engaged in the show. So the idea is make a show more like a living movie or something. We did that on our last tour, the Shiny tour. I think we did like 42 arena shows, and it was fantastic. People loved it. I mean, the satisfaction of the fans was 99.9% positive. They loved the immersive atmosphere of the production and the deep catalog of songs. So this would be the same thing. for Melancholy, and then hopefully we'll one day do it for Machina, and then the new album we're working on.
Yeah, the Roger Waters show we got to last year was just a visual masterpiece, and he's very good at that. And of course, the sound is amazing as well. But would you ever be tempted to do what Jack White is doing and make people put their phone in a pouch and make them immerse themselves in the show? Or do you kind of rely on a little bit of social media, I guess, you know?
No, nothing against Jack, but I'm on the opposite side of the street. I want people documenting our shows, and I want people sharing. For a band that's been, you know, declared dead 50 times, you know, the greatest thing that people can do is share what we're doing and show that there's a lot of life. Like the new album, we've made 8 videos. I think we just released a 9th today. All that sharing is completely necessary. That's the way we've beaten back the critics and the naysayers, is just for fans to be supportive. So I have no problem with it at all. I mean, please take pictures.
Yeah, good.
I'm really begging you, like, please document what we're doing. We need to show the world that there's plenty of life here, and it's not the way it's been portrayed. You know, the story is actually quite different.
So how do you look at other bands in a similar spot at the moment who are still doing guitar-driven rock and roll? Is it dead, or is it just going through a time where it's just changing?
No, it's not dead. I think when you look at commercial radio, guitar music, unless it's a station that just plays kind of guitar-based music, I'm sure you have that stuff there too. Yeah, but the majority of music on the radio does not feature the guitar at the moment, right? So we looked at it as like, well, can we just make pop music again the way that we did in the past? Like we made songs like 1979 and Disarm and Perfect. You know, we didn't make guitar-based music, and we had hits with those songs. So can we do that again? And my complaint as a guitar player is it's up to us as guitar players to evolve the guitar's position in pop music. The Beatles did it, you know, Jimi Hendrix did it, Eric Clapton did it. There are ways, and there are great artists that Eddie Van Halen did it. Heck, you know, Eddie did stuff on pop radio that no one would have thought would have gotten on pop radio. His music was so brilliant, his playing was so brilliant, it didn't matter. So I think it's just up to us as guitar players to evolve the position of the instrument. And part of that's production, and part of that's what people get used to hearing. Obviously, you've had a lot of other influences in the past 20 years, particularly from rap, that have kind of changed the pop landscape. But that's, you know, it's a competitive business. There's nothing wrong with that. Evolution and trying new things is totally fine. I mean, so I'm cool with it. But I think we need to be realistic. You know what I mean? It's not 1962 and it's not 1992. You know, it's been a long time since anybody's really had massive hits, you know, with a bunch of bands with the guitars outside of those stations.
Were you hit pretty hard with Eddie Van Halen's death recently, or even Malcolm Young's death a couple of years ago as well? Did that affect you at all?
Yeah, it's hard because, you know, I grew up on these guys, and their influence is, you know, massive, and you know, listen, you know, in the case of the Young brothers, and in the case of Eddie Van Halen, who I knew a little bit, I mean, thousands of hours of listening to their music, you know, and so you realize, like, when somebody like that passes, like, that's something you never get back. You know, like, one thing that people that are really AC/DC fans, they love to talk about is Malcolm's playing. How, you know, everyone of course focuses on Angus, who's amazing, but Malcolm's playing is really the bedrock of the AC/DC sound. You know, if you really know the band and on how they work, he's really the linchpin of the thing. And even when you see them play live, it's like really how he would focus on the drummer and stuff. So when you lose somebody like that, I mean, you can never replace that. You have to stop and really tip your hat and realize, like, what incredible thing that is, because it's so hard to reach that level and then sustain it. Like in the case of AC/DC, like how many years now? 45 years, something like that.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard it yet, you probably haven't, because it's only been out for a couple of weeks. The new album from AC/DC is really, really strong. So
doesn't surprise me. I mean, just so talented. So talented. I was one of those kids on my block that I had when AC/DC, you had to get the records on import. Like in 70. I was the kid on my block who had the imports before they were distributed in America. What was the live album? If You Want Blood, You Got It, or whatever. That was the first album I really connected with them on, and I wore that thing out. I mean, what a band. I mean, so it doesn't surprise me. When you're great, you can always be great. There's this great quote I read once, and I can never remember it, but it's like, if you're as great as Bob Dylan, you know, Bob Dylan can have bad days, but he's always going to be Bob Dylan, you know. And if you're not so great, you can only hope to be Bob Dylan for one day. And that's how I categorize AC/DC. They're always going to be great. There's nothing's going to change that.
Well, it's great to have a chat, and best of luck for the album release. It feels it's been a long time coming, because you know, you've been trickle feeding it out bit by bit over the last few months, and
totally.
it must be a big relief to get it out there now. So check out Sheer. It's on streaming, and you can download it and buy it. I'm assuming it's on vinyl as well. Vinyl's become a big thing lately, hasn't it, for charts particularly?
We have, I swear to God, I think we have 7 different colors of vinyl. I mean, we've gone all in on vinyl. Now, actually, just quick message to fans. You know, these days, buying vinyl is probably the best way to support a band. Listening on streaming is great, but if you actually buy the vinyl, it really, really supports bands. So I can't encourage people enough to support your bands by buying vinyl. That actually makes a difference.
Well, and we've seen lately as well, just locally here in Australia, we've had bands like Midnight Oil, if you know them. They were streaming very, very low, like number 50, and then at the end of the week, the vinyl charts came in on a Friday, and they got number 1. You know, so it makes so much of a difference with a chart.
Yeah. Real quick on Midnight Oil, I saw them twice back in the day. Probably one of the greatest live bands I ever saw. So, is Peter Garrett still your like health minister or it's ecological minister or something, right?
He was. He's back in the band though.
Oh, really?
He retired from politics, and he survived. He survived politics, and he's back with the band. And they've got a new album, a full-length album next year, but they put out a sort of an EP this year as well. So.
Oh, I know. I got to get on that. They're a great band, fantastic band.
And to see them live, and also a photograph now as well. Just what a amazing band to see live, particularly.
I tell you a quick story if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so I've seen them in theater here in Chicago, Metro, where we used to play a lot. It was the second time I've seen Midnight Oil, and they were kind of blowing up on MTV and all that stuff. And they were so loud that the plaster from the ceiling fell, you know, and fell on Peter's head. And he kind of looked up like, fuck yeah, you know, like this is rock and roll. Like literally that we're shaking the building apart. So I'll never forget that. Great band. Literally one of the best bands I've ever seen live. What an incredible band.
Yeah, I've had a lot of Americans say the same thing, that they've seen them somewhere in the States on their last US tour, and they just blew everyone away.
Well, see, the thing about you guys, I've obviously been there enough, and you know, even dated someone from your world. You guys like your rock and roll straight, like a shot of adrenaline. So when bands come out of there from your world and they get it right, they have that thing in the band. It's kind of shocking. It's similar to Detroit rock and roll. If you know, like Ted Nugent, Bob Seger, the Stooges, there's kind of a straightness in the rock and roll. Australian rock and roll, Rose Tattoo is another example. It's like something about the straightness in the rock and roll. So when it hits, it's like a shot of adrenaline.
Well said. And I love hearing that. That's, you know, because we often think we're in this little bubble here and no one takes notice outside of it. And we're all very proud of bands like, you know, ACDC and the Oils and Rose Tattoo.
No, you should be, because the legacy of Australian music is just growing. And that's the thing. When I was a kid, it was like, oh, they're from Australia. Where's that? You know, somebody had to point on a map. But yeah, I mean, really, the last few years, you guys have really asserted yourself. It's fantastic. Because this is what I keep saying to people in the West, you know, we're so used to being about America or the UK. But when the world really comes online, when world culture, world music comes online, it's really going to change the pop charts. And so we're right on the edge of that. We're going to see you see with BTS, for example, I mean, it's pop, obviously, but you see an explosion now where people from other cultures singing different languages starting to hit the world stage. So who knows? I mean, maybe the evolution of the guitar will come from a place we could never even imagine, India or Siberia, for all we know. And it'll be great because they get to have that experience and bring that to the table. Maybe we've gotten too lazy with our rock and rollers.
Well, you're right, because gone are the days of, you know, going down to the record store and importing your own. You can just get it instantly, you know.
Hey, man, I'm a whore. Click, buy, steal, just